With us today is TRACY GOODWIN. She reached out to me, and I was so excited to look at her book. Her book is Captivate the Room with Your Voice. And it's a niche area that she's focused on that is such an important niche area, which is how we use our voice and what our voice says. Not just the content of what we say, but so much of what we communicate, everybody by now knows, is how we communicate and the authority with which we speak, and what the way we speak communicates about what we're trying to say and about ourselves. And so Tracy's here to talk about that with us. She has a background in acting, in speaking. She has a tremendous number of degrees, everything from child drama to corporate communications. She, I think, is the woman for the job to help all of us figure out how to show up in a way that brings the best of who we are into the room. So Tracy, thank you so much for being on the Bregman Leadership Podcast.
Oh, I'm so delighted to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Let's start with the basic question of why the voice is so important.
Well, the voice is the instrument that has the ability to make me feel. To make me feel something. The voice is the orchestra of the heart. And so it is the instrument or the tool that expresses exactly how we feel. The interesting thing about the voice is there's 5 vocal variety elements. There's 5 senses. We use our voice to touch other people's senses, which in turn affects their emotions. And that's how we create connection. That's how we compel people to take action. So in my world, the voice is the most powerful tool we have.
So I want to reflect already that because I'm attuned to it now, having looked at your book and also just heard what you said, that you're expressing the idea with subtle voice technique, that you're expressing your emotion around it. You're expressing, the word that came to me was wonder, as you were describing it. So I think, already I'm beginning to hear things differently than I would have heard them otherwise. You mentioned 5 elements. Can you describe them?
Yes. There are 5 elements of vocal variety. Pause, which is the most powerful tool in the toolbox and the one that most people avoid. There are shades of loud and soft, shades of fast and slow, shades of high and low, and elongation. And so there's 5 of them. There's really a little bit more than 5, but I put it in the group of 5. And the big problem is because of our psychology of the voice, most people gravitate to one. When you gravitate to, I go fast, I go fast, I go fast. Or, I get up here and I stay up here. You're so predictable and you're not touching our emotions. But when you roll in all 5, you take us on a journey.
So I'm curious about, aside from those 5, because I want to go into a little bit more depth of those 5, there's also the sense of robustness of the voice itself, that there's a sense of authority that one can convey with, there's certain people who talk and they have a low baritone, significant voice. And even when you sort of talk like here with the kind of little pitch, that there's a distinction of what you're communicating. And, is it worth and can we cultivate more authority in the sound of our voice? And am I asking even the right question?
Well, I think that it's ultimately about confidence. And I think that confidence comes in controlling the conversation. And so I think when we get locked into one thing, we're predictable. And so, see, every 90 seconds, our brain tells us to check out. So when I know where you're going and what you're doing, and that 90 seconds kicks in, I got to see what's happening on Facebook. So we want that unpredictability. We want that journey. And so by stepping beyond that one thing, we are conveying more confidence, because when we get stuck in one thing, we're kind of asking for permission and we're kind of being really, really careful. What I hear you saying in your question is, what do you think about bold choices? Well, I think bold choices is how we get people fired up. And it doesn't have to be my version of bold choices. I'm a little large, I'm vibrant. This is what I do, but I need your version of bold choices. And yet we work in this safe box of what are they thinking? I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't want to cross the line. Well, you're never going to get the result you want when you stay in that voice box, no pun intended.
So you're saying something very powerful, which is that it's not just about how you breathe or, how you lower your voice an octave. You're saying that it has to do with the intention with which we speak, or the groundedness from which we speak, and that ultimately if I've made a decision and it's a clear decision, that's more important in terms of the authority of my voice. That will come through the authority of my voice, as opposed to if I'm a little wimpy around my decision, or I'm unsure of it, or I really want your approval.
Oh, you better believe it. You better believe it. The minute I start worrying about the words and worrying about what you're thinking, see what happened to my voice, I'm not sure what's going on here, and so I'm playing it safe. But if I can connect to that message, forget about the words, connect to the message and bring it to life, trust that, okay, I'm going to get fast here, and trust that I'm going to get quiet here, and trust that pause. I mean, just getting people to take a pause sometimes is massive. And when they do, they see the power of it. But yeah, trusting the journey, trusting yourself.
It's great. It's great. And it's actually great for coaches who are listening, because as coaches, you're certainly in a position of helping someone show up powerfully, but you're also in a diagnostic position. You can hear through the hesitance of the voice that maybe they haven't totally committed. And you could use that data in order to ask them a question that can get them to see that they haven't committed, or they're ambivalent, and to address that ambivalence. So that's very powerful.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like, and I train my people, you've got to be the tour guide. I don't know what you know, even if I'm in your field. Let's say, Peter, you and I went to the same school. We're in the same field. I don't know what you know. I didn't walk your path. I didn't have your journey. You have to be my tour guide. You have to let me know with your voice what you feel and what I should feel. And when that happens, there's a connection. Then you compel me to take action. Then you've got me. I'm a fan,
And it's not that, we might think, well, if I want you to feel something, I'll tell you. I mean, this sounds ridiculous, but oftentimes, I'll tell you what I want you to feel is what I hear people say. And that what you're saying is, not only can you not tell me what to feel, like the absurdity of saying you should be happy or you should be excited, right? Which we hear all the time, but we know is not effective. But you're also saying that even the content of what you're saying isn't the full picture. It may even be a very small percentage of the picture, that it's how you say it that generates the feeling. It's not what you're saying, but it's how you say it that generates feeling.
Absolutely. And I think that's the biggest mistake I see people make, is they give all the power to the words. I have a saying, the words are everything and they are nothing. It's how you bring them to life that changes me.
So let me ask you a hard question, which has to do with writing, which is writing is all words. And the inflection comes from the reader. So, we're talking about voice, and it's perfectly valid for you to just say, this is outside the spectrum of what, I could give you advice about. But while we're here, let me ask you, is there a way of conveying voice in writing that does the same thing?
That's a great question. And I'm certainly not a writer, and I would never say that's my expertise, but I can tell you about a couple of experiences that I have had where people have sent me their material to look at, and I read it, and what I felt was the same thing that I hear. I don't understand how important you are. It's your about page. I don't feel your importance. Can you go back in and toot your own horn in your words a bit? Or, an energy healer friend of mine, she sent me some material and I read it and I said, I need more adjectives. I need more adjectives because I get it and I like it and it's good, but I need you to get me fired up. Put in those words.
Right.
So it is kind of the same.
Right. So give us some hints now. How could we improve our voice? One of the things that you've already said is get grounded in what you're trying to say, what emotion you're trying to convey in people, how you feel about something before you speak. What other advice could you give us to improve our voice?
Well, first of all, and grounding is huge. Connecting to that message, getting in your body, because when you are up in your head thinking about those words, your voice and your body cannot work. You're disconnected. And that's where, people come to me, they say, I'm not captivating, I have no confidence. They're focused on the words every time, right? So that's like major.
So when you tell people, sorry to interrupt, when you tell people to ground, how would they do that for people who don't know how to ground?
Well, I'll give you one of the very best ways I teach it, and it's going to sound absolutely crazy, but you got to trust me on this. It works. You sit on a hard chair, feet on the ground, hands, palms down, sit on your hands, palms down, and speak out loud for 2 or 3 minutes. That forces your sound straight out of the pipeline. And see, because the voice is the most vulnerable tool we have, it's trying to go out the jaw, it's trying to go out the hands, it's trying to go out the nose. But when you sit on your hands, it's kind of like those rings, those children, you have children, you stack those rings on the stick. It's like stacking those rings on the stick. You sit there on your hands for 3 minutes in a hard chair, you're putting everything together. Mm-hmm. And your sound will flow out and you will connect into your body. Taking in a breath is another way. I don't believe I think it's really a slippery slope to say, just remember to breathe. You're not going to, because you've laid into your muscle memory, we're in brace mode. Hold our breath, not let it out. Maybe we're going to breathe, but we're not going to let it out, connecting to the breath. But if you can start with some fuel, if you can start with a breath, ground it, sit on your hands, talk out loud, your sound's going to flow out of your pipeline. It's got to flow to me for me to connect with it. All right. So that's one of the major ways I teach this.
Does it matter if you breathe through your nose or through your mouth?
See, they call me a little unorthodox, Peter. I believe what works for you works.
Great.
I've always felt that about everything. We find your solution.
Great. So what's next? So we're grounded. What else can you give us?
Speed is not your friend. I hear from so many people that they go fast because they're afraid they're going to lose their audience. That's not. You're doing something that's never going to get you the result that you want because, and I go back to, I don't know what you know. And so if you start hurrying up, you're trying to think about the words, you see me looking at my phone, you're dozing off, I'm gone, I'm out. I don't know what you're even talking about. That 90 seconds kicked in, you're blazing along. I got to see what's happening on Facebook, right? So speed is not your friend. The goal is to calibrate that speed at what I call a 5 on a scale of 1 to 10. 10's an auctioneer, 1 you're asleep. You got to go at a 5. Now you can give me pops of fast and you can give me pops of slow, but your core has to be a 5. So going fast is not solving your problem. You got to calibrate that 5.
And I guess you're probably very intentional about where to be a 10, where to be a 1, and where to be a 5. I mean, 5 would be normal. What kinds of situations might we want to pop up? And what kinds of situations might we want to slow down?
I'm getting really excited. I am getting really excited. So I want to speed up a little, and I might roll in a little loud there. See, loud is what everybody goes to loud. I think we must have learned that in 3rd grade or something. Be loud, be loud. No, loud is the weakest tool in the toolbox. So I get excited, or I really, really want to make a point. People go fast with anger. No. You want to get some power? you slow down. I need you to understand how I feel. So we get to more intense moments. We get to more feeling moments. We get to more power moments. We might slow down. And that's where it gets really fun, Peter. You have these 5 elements and you start regulating them and you start controlling the conversation, not the outcome.
It's great. Give us another one.
Okay, another tip?
Yeah, another tip.
All right, let's see. I think one of the trickiest ones, but one of the most important and powerful ones is melody. Because melody is where the trust is built. And we fear melody. Melody is scary. Melody, that's, I think, one of the reasons that we jump into that. I gotta keep it all under control. I gotta keep it really safe. Don't let anybody. Well, they're not trusting you. They're not going to learn from you, buy from you, follow you, etc. So I think it becomes important that we start playing around with melody. And the best way to do that is for me to say, start being yourself, because in life you do it.
So help me understand melody. I mean, I understand it in a song, but I don't understand it in speech.
Well, you see, I just went up and now I'm back down. I want to tell you something. Did you hear how I went up and down?
Yeah, maybe this is a blind spot for me around melody. So melody is is pitch or it's not pitch?
It is. It's pitch. It's the ups and downs. It's the highs and lows.
Okay.
It's the roller coaster. I need you to see this. I want you to know how I feel. I really like where you're going with this question.
Got it.
You see, and I honestly think that I personally, in my experience, think that pitch gets tricky for men. Mm-hmm. And I have a theory why.
Why?
Well, because of what I teach, I believe in what I call psychology of the voice, that our experiences in life, starting from childhood, lay in our voice into our muscle memory. And every bad experience, every negative, shut up, be quiet, you're no good, that shapes our voice. And I think because men go through that voice change, mm-hmm. and they had the girl laughed, the boys laughed, they had this one ding, and that went into that subconscious mind and laid in, we got to be careful. Mm-hmm. We got to be careful here.
And so men become more monotone in order to avoid the melody that you're saying is so effective, because it both makes speaking and listening more interesting and also accentuates a variety of points.
Yes. And, women have an albatross with pitch as well, because they kind of get stuck up here. A lot of women do. They get stuck up here, so they can't utilize the lower. So I think it's one of the most fragile ones, but I think it's really important. And I think that the best way in a short podcast to tell the listeners to work on it is think about being yourself, because the closer you get to letting me in, because you use more pitch in real life than you do when you make a business presentation.
So now if you could crack this one, I'll be very impressed. But, saying to someone, be yourself, and actually them being themselves is very, very difficult. And I think the gap has to do with stress. It has to do with the situation. In fact, the more types of situations you say to someone, just be yourself, those are the kinds of situations where they would find it most difficult to be themselves. So what tips can you give people that could help them in those moments when they are least likely to be themselves, to increase the probability that they will actually be themselves?
Yeah, that's a great, wonderful rubber band ball question. I think a lot of it has to do with some inner work. I think just based on the people that I have worked with, what I have seen with them is they are exceptionally bogged down. We as a society are exceptionally bogged down with what other people think. And I think that plays a big part in, I can't be myself because what if they don't like me? And so I think you have to answer the question, I'll never forget the time I said to someone, what are they going to think about me? And she looked at me and she said, they're not. They're thinking about themselves. And that cracked open a whole can of freedom for me, because I had I was raised in a family where I wasn't allowed to speak. The irony that I'm a voice coach, right? And so all of a sudden it was like, oh my gosh, everybody's not obsessively thinking about whether I'm doing a good job or not. Wow. So I think we have to wrap our minds around something that resonates with us, that gives us the freedom to say, the people that are going to like me are going to like me, and the people that don't aren't, and that's okay. You know?
It's interesting because what it makes me think is the importance of having such a grounded life that you're rarely in a situation where you're in dire need of people thinking of you in a certain way. So I can imagine in sales, for example, you always care what the other person thinks, because what the other person thinks is makes the difference between whether you're going to be able to accomplish the sale or not. On the other hand, being too concerned about what the other person thinks is probably the thing that will counteract the sale, like will be counterproductive to the sale. So in effect, you have to not need that sale in
That's
such
right.
a way where you could be yourself, which means that the rest of your life has to be in order in a certain sense, that if you don't get the things that you want, you still know that you're okay. And the rest of that, your life might simply be, being in a meditative space and meditating for 20 minutes and knowing that who you are is more important than any particular thing that you accomplish. But ultimately, you need to be able to give up things in order to be able to show up and not care or not care too much, or not shift your behavior in order to get somebody to think about you in a certain way.
I love that so, so much. And I cannot wait to hear this podcast. I'm going to replay that over and over, because that's it exactly. And that's what I was kind of talking about earlier. We have to give up the outcome. We have to play the journey. Because if I start focusing on, I got to have this sale, I'm going to use your sales one, and I got to have it, you're going to hear the desperation in my voice. I call that voice barriers. That's going to push you away. So I'm going to start implementing vocally what I think is going to get me the result that I want, that is never going to get me the result that I want. But if I let you connect with me, if I let you in, and I'm not saying, oh, I don't care about your sale, who cares? I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying, let us in. And that is what bold choices and vulnerability is all about.
So you've had a little bit of time to get to know me, at least on this podcast, and I know that you've looked at some of my work because you've mentioned it. You've seen some of not my work, but you've seen some of my speeches, and I would love some feedback from you. I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but this is what you do, and I've got you for another couple of minutes, and why not take advantage of it? So I would love for your sort of unadulterated feedback. I mean, what do you see that works, and what do you see that I could do better in my voice from your experience?
Great. And I do love your work. And that's one of the things I love about your work is I'm kind of like taking Scorsese to a movie. I'm pretty tough on voices because I need to, I want to be affected emotionally. And that's one of the things that I have enjoyed so much about your work, especially your videos, which is really an albatross for many, many people. And I don't believe in bad voices. I believe in voices, and I believe in amazing voices. And you're tough. You're tough. I mean, you are putting me on the spot only because there's not a lot of obvious things. I will say this to you. I want to ask you a question first. Do you feel like your sound is stuck in the back of your throat sometimes?
I do.
Yeah. Okay. That's the main thing I hear. So what has happened is something along the way in your life and this is very, very common, and people don't even realize it, and it's a ding that came in, and your subconscious mind said, hold up, we got this. We're going to lock this sound down a little bit. So you're having to work a little harder than I want you to have to work to let that sound out. So literally it becomes about tapping into a different layer of muscle memory it's kind of like your pipeline has a little bit of a clog in it. Mm-hmm. It's very, very slight. And the audience is going to be like, what is she talking about? I don't hear that. Peter's great. And you are great. You are so great.
No, but you don't have to. That's great.
Thing.
I hear it and I feel it. So great.
Yeah.
How do we
solve
for it? Yeah.
Okay.
Fix me.
I'm going to fix it. Okay, so I'm going to spell a word for you. Where are you from? Are you from New York
I'm from New
originally?
York originally.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. That and sometimes region has to do with it as well. I want you to say a word for me. I'm going to spell it because I don't want you to mimic me in any way. It's spelled COOL.
Cool.
Okay. Say it again.
Cool.
All right. You feel that in the back of your throat?
Yep.
All right. Now we're going to do something silly. You're going to bring your mouth really far forward, almost like you're puckering up to kiss someone. There you go. Now say it again. Say it like 3 times in a row.
Cool. Cool. Cool.
One more time.
Cool.
Now say it normal.
Cool. Totally different.
Totally different.
It feels different to me.
It sounded totally different. And it felt like probably it was flowing out a bit easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is great for, I've got these people that come, they speak 6-8 hours a day and they're dragging their throats out. It's because they're having to drag their sound out. So literally all I did was I just propped your pipeline up a little bit. Wasn't bad. And so we tapped into a different layer of muscle memory that the pipeline had forgotten.
That's very cool.
Isn't that cool?
So how do I then integrate that into, I mean, I know we're playing around with seconds, but how do I integrate that into my everyday speaking?
Okay. So the way muscle memory works is we've got to lay it in, we've got to get it set, and then you make it your own. Now, literally this can happen in a month's time. And so what we do is I give you some words and I'll send you some words and you're going to repeat those every morning. You're going to repeat those words every morning for about 2 rounds. You're laying it in. It's like gym for the face. Mm-hmm. All right. So you're doing your exercise. But it's not warm-ups. We're laying in a new layer of muscle memory because you're tapping into a layer that's not serving you as best as it could. So you're going to get this list of words. It sounds like cool, fool, things like that. You're going to practice them every morning for 4 minutes. And then it's going to start integrating itself.
And is it only operative for words like cool, or does it end up affecting all of my speaking?
It will affect all of your speaking because what I'm doing is I'm using that set of words to pull that sound out of the back of your throat.
And I have to say, it actually already feels to me as I'm speaking that there's a difference.
Yeah, because what I've done is I've tapped into the middle muscles of your face that were a bit weak. And so the lower part of your face was holding your sound in, was holding it in. I just propped that pipeline up. So it really is not even about, well, what words are we using? It's about what muscles I wanted to tap into to get that sound flowing out. So you practice that for literally, my people can get their sound unstuck in about 2 weeks.
That's fantastic.
And yeah, it's really cool. And some people it's the jaw. Some people it's a nasality. I could just hear it in the back of your throat. And so once you free that, because see, what I love about you is I've heard you do an amazing job with vocal variety, which is my thing. And I've heard you do a great job with that. That sound being stuck a little bit is inhibiting the maximum variety that I hear inside of you. I hear glimpses, which is great. When that sound is unstuck, oh my gosh, it's about being, going to the next level is what it's about.
And it's about flowing, it sounds like, in a way that, there's literally, I'm going to use the terms that you're using, but that, you unclog your voice in a way that it more freely and completely conveys what it is that you're trying to express. And that ultimately is, the key to using your voice. I'm so delighted to have had you on the podcast, Tracy. Captivate the Room with Your Voice is her most recent book. We will, on the show page, show you how to link up with her. But Tracy Goodwin, thank you so much for being on the Bregman Leadership Podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed being here.